When I stepped through the front door, boots still dusty from the base, I expected hugs and cheers, but what I got instead stopped me cold. I dropped my duffel bag right there in the hallway and just stood for a second, letting the words sink in. 2 years away, 2 long years of deployment overseas, where every sunrise felt like a coin flip. And this was the welcome home. My name's Luke, 28, and I'd been counting down the days to come back. I pictured my mom running into my arms like in those viral videos, my dad clapping me on the back, my siblings yelling my name. Instead, I got my mom hugging my younger brother first, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "You're the only son who was here when we needed him." My dad barely looked up from his coffee before casually adding, "Oh, by the way, your room is your sister's nursery now. Hope you don't mind." I didn't even say anything at first, just smiled that tight-lipped, not actually a smile kind of smile. I could feel the adrenaline from the airport still in my veins, but it was quickly being replaced with something heavier, darker. I walked into the living room. Well, what used to be the living room. There were baby toys everywhere, and a playpen right where my dad's recliner used to sit. My duffel was still sitting by the door, a big ugly reminder that I'd been gone long enough for them to erase me from the house. My brother, Jake, leaned against the doorway, grinning smugly, as if he'd just won some kind of competition I didn't know I was in. "Don't look so shocked," he said, like he was doing me a favor. "You were gone for 2 years. We had to make changes. Besides, you've got the garage. We cleared some space for you to crash there until you figure out your next step." The garage. My next step. Like I hadn't been risking my life while he was here playing house and taking over my space. I could feel that little ember of anger spark in my chest, but I stayed quiet. The truth is, I'd been preparing for this exact moment ever since my last phone call with them 8 months ago. I knew from the way they sounded, distracted, distant, that they were moving on without me. They never visited, never sent care packages, barely even texted. The only time I heard from them was when my mom asked if I could send money to help with some things. I sent it, of course, thousands of dollars over those 2 years. And now here I was, standing in the house I'd grown up in, the house my grandfather built with his own hands, and I suddenly felt like a guest. No, worse than a guest. Guests are welcome. I sat down at the kitchen table and just listened to them talk, letting the words wash over me. My dad was going on about how hard it was when the roof needed fixing last winter, how Jake stepped up like a man and handled it. My mom chimed in about how expensive daycare was and how everyone had to pitch in. "We really pulled together as a family while you were gone," she said with a pointed look in my direction, like I'd somehow abandoned them on purpose. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them about the nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my bunk, praying I'd make it home alive. I wanted to tell them how many times I thought of this house, of this kitchen table, of my family, just to keep myself going. Instead, I stayed quiet, letting them dig the hole deeper. Finally, I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I'd been carrying since the day I left base. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I set it down on the table with a soft thud and just looked at them. "What's that?" my dad asked, frowning. "You'll see," I said calmly, almost casually, even though my heart was pounding. But I didn't hand it to them yet. No, not yet. Because I wanted them to keep talking, to keep showing me exactly how little they thought of me before they realized just how wrong they were. And they did. Jake laughed and said, "Don't tell me you're going to ask for your old room back. We just painted it last month. Pastel yellow, real nice. The baby loves it." Mom nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, it was such a blessing to have the space. I mean, you're hardly ever here, Luke. You've got your own life now. We had to think about what was best for the family." That word again, family. Like I was somehow separate from it. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make them shift uncomfortably. I could feel the tide turning, but I wasn't ready to flip it just yet. I wanted them to feel the weight of this moment, to really believe that everything was under their control, before I showed them it wasn't. And right then, as the baby started crying upstairs and Mom got up to soothe her, my dad looked at me and said something that nearly made me laugh out loud. "You should think about getting a job around here, settling down. Jake's been helping me run the property, but it'd be nice to have both of my sons contributing for once." I almost smiled. Almost. Because in about 2 minutes, they were going to find out just how much I'd been contributing and just how much power that gave me now. I slid the folder closer to me, rested my hand on top of it, and waited for my mom to come back downstairs. I wanted everyone in the room when I opened it. When the truth came out, and when she finally sat back down, wiping her hands on her apron, I looked at each of them, one by one, and said, "I think you should read this." Then I pushed the folder across the table. Their faces went pale as soon as they saw the first page, but I didn't say a word. Not yet. I wanted to watch it all sink in. My dad's face was the first to change. His casual, almost bored expression melted away into something between confusion and shock. He leaned forward, adjusting his glasses, scanning the page like maybe he'd misread the words. My mom picked it up next, her hand trembling slightly as she flipped through the pages. Legal language, signatures, dates. She didn't say anything at first, but I could see her lips press into a thin line. Jake was the last to look. He didn't even bother hiding his smirk until his eyes landed on the second page, the one with my name printed in bold under owner of record. That wiped the grin off his face. "What is this?" my dad asked finally, his voice sharper now, less casual. "It's the deed," I said simply, leaning back in my chair. "And the land title. And a copy of the transfer paperwork. Everything's in my name now." For a moment, there was silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that buzzes in the air, thick and heavy, like before a thunderstorm. My mom started, then stopped, shaking her head like she couldn't process it. "This is some kind of mistake. Your grandfather left the house to us." I nodded slowly. "He did. And last year, when Dad called asking me to send money for the roof repairs, I told him I'd cover the costs on one condition, that the property be signed over to me. He agreed. I have the notarized paperwork right there." Jake's chair screeched against the tile as he stood up. "You mean to tell me you bought this house out from under us? Without telling anyone?" I shrugged. "I told Dad. He signed it. Guess he didn't bother mentioning that part to you." My dad looked furious now, but underneath the anger, I saw something else. Guilt. He knew he'd signed those papers. Knew exactly what he'd agreed to. But I also knew he'd never expected me to follow through. Never thought I'd actually file them and make it official. "You had no right," my mom said sharply, her voice rising. "This is our family home. You think you can just come back from the military and take control of everything?" I met her eyes. "I didn't take control. You gave it away. You asked me for help, and I gave it. More than you ever knew. I paid for the roof, the taxes, the back payments on the loan you were behind on. Without me, you would have lost this house last year." The room went very quiet again. My mom looked like I'd slapped her. My dad stared at the table. Jake, of course, was the first to break the silence. "So what? You're just gonna kick us out? Throw us all on the street after everything we did while you were gone?" I raised an eyebrow. "Everything you did? You mean turning my room into a nursery without even asking me? Acting like I was dead and gone? Making decisions like I didn't exist?" His face flushed. "We had to do what was best for the family." That word again, I said softly, almost to myself. "Family. You keep saying that, but what you mean is what's best for you. Not once did you ask what I wanted. Not once did you think about what I was going through over there." I didn't yell. I didn't have to. The quiet in my voice carried more weight than shouting ever could. My mom finally put the folder down and folded her hands on top of it like she was trying to regain control. "Luke, listen. We were just trying to hold things together. You don't understand what it was like." I cut her off. "You're right. I don't understand what it was like for you. But I know what it was like for me, getting shot at, wondering if I'd ever make it home, and still wiring money every month so you wouldn't lose this place. And when I finally walk through that door, you hug him first and tell me I don't belong here anymore." My dad stood up then, looking like he wanted to say something, but I held up a hand. "No, don't. I'm not done." The baby started crying again upstairs, and nobody moved to go get her. The tension was so thick it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "What are you going to do?" my mom asked finally, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood, walked over to the window, and looked out at the land stretching beyond the house. The fields my grandfather had planted, the woods we used to play in as kids. All of it was mine now. When I turned back, their eyes followed me. "I haven't decided yet," I said, my tone even. "But things are going to change. Starting now." Jake scoffed. "You can't just come back and start barking orders like you own the place." I gave him a slow smile. Not angry, not smug, just calm. "Jake, I literally own the place." His jaw clenched. My mom put a hand on his arm like she was afraid he'd say something worse. My dad sat back down heavily, rubbing his forehead. The power shift in the room was almost physical. For the first time since I'd come home, I wasn't the one on the defensive. But this was just the beginning. I had no intention of dropping the hammer all at once. No, I wanted them to stew on this, to really feel the weight of what had just happened before I made my next move. So I picked up the folder, tucked it under my arm, and grabbed my bag. "Where are you going?" my mom asked quickly. "Into town," I said over my shoulder. "I'll be back later. Don't wait up." And with that, I walked out, leaving them sitting at the table, pale and silent, wondering what came next. Because that was the point. I wanted them to wonder. When I came back later that night, the house was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge and the soft creak of the floorboards under my boots. The lights in the kitchen were still on, but the table was empty. No folder, no parents, no Jake. For a split second, I thought maybe they'd left, but then I heard low voices coming from the living room. I stopped just out of sight. "Not right." My mom was whispering, her voice sharp. "He blindsided us with that paperwork. We have to do something." "You think I don't know that?" my dad hissed back. "But it's legal. My signature's on it. I told him we'd do it if he paid for the roof, and he did. I can't just undo it." "So what? We just let him take over." Jake's voice was louder, angrier. "He's gonna throw us out, I know it." You saw the look on his face. I almost stepped in right there, but I didn't. I leaned against the wall and listened, letting them talk. "He's not going to throw us out," my mom said after a pause. "He's just angry. He'll calm down. We just need to make him feel guilty before he decides to do anything drastic." "Yeah," Jake muttered. "Maybe we should remind him who was here when Grandpa died. Who stayed and helped run things. He wasn't here. He doesn't deserve to just waltz back and be the boss." That last sentence burned, but I kept my face neutral as I stepped into the room. Jake flinched like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. My mom's expression softened instantly, that fake sweetness sliding over her features like a mask. "Luke," she said carefully, "we were just talking about you." "I know," I said flatly, dropping my bag onto the chair. "Heard the whole thing." Silence. My dad cleared his throat, trying to sound reasonable. "Son, we just need to have an honest conversation about all of this. Nobody's trying to take anything from you." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Nobody's trying to take anything from me. You already did. You took my room, my place in this family, and you made it very clear where I stand. And now that the situation's different, now you want a conversation." "That's not fair," my mom said quickly. "You don't know what it was like for us while you were gone." I turned to her. "You're right. I don't know what it was like for you. But I know what it was like for me, lying in a ditch halfway across the world, wondering if I'd see another sunrise. And do you know what kept me going? This house. The thought of coming home. You think I'm just going to shrug and let you tell me where I can sleep in my own home?" My words landed hard. Even Jake didn't have a comeback. Finally, my dad gestured for me to sit. "Nobody is saying you don't belong here. We just made choices we thought were best for everyone. The baby needed a room. You weren't using yours." "That's exactly the problem," I said, my voice low. "You didn't think about me at all. You just assumed I'd be fine with whatever you decided." Jake rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, man. You're acting like we committed some crime. You were gone. We didn't know if you were even coming back." I shot him a cold look. "So what? You figured you'd erase me from the picture just in case? That way it'd hurt less if I didn't make it home." That shut him up. I let the silence sit there, heavy and uncomfortable. Then I said, "I'm not kicking anyone out yet, but things are going to change. Tomorrow, we're going to sit down and go over the finances, the property, everything. If I'm going to be the owner, I'm going to know exactly what's going on here." My dad stiffened. "That's unnecessary. I've been handling things just fine." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "Because last I checked, you were 3 months behind on taxes before I bailed you out. So yeah, we're going to sit down, and you're going to show me the books." He didn't answer, just looked away. I didn't wait for them to argue. I went out to the garage, the space they cleared for me, and shut the door behind me. It was cold, the concrete floor unwelcoming, but I didn't care. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my email. Everything I needed was there: the mortgage statements, the receipts from the wire transfers, the notarized documents. I'd been keeping meticulous records for months, and now I was going to use them. As I sat on the edge of the old cot they'd set up for me, I could hear muffled voices through the door. Jake was upset, my mom trying to soothe him, my dad saying something about keeping things civil. I smiled to myself, because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control. The next morning, the mood at breakfast was tense, to put it mildly. Nobody looked at me. Nobody said good morning. My mom slid a plate of eggs across the table like we were strangers. "So," I said, breaking the silence. "About those books." My dad didn't answer. "Fine," Jake snapped. "You want to see everything? Be ready to actually do some work then. Because we've been handling everything without you." I ignored him. "After lunch, bring whatever paperwork you've got." My mom finally spoke up, her voice careful. "Luke, can we just slow down a little? You just got home. Maybe we should celebrate, be together as a family before we start talking about business." I stared at her for a long moment. "You mean celebrate how well you all managed without me?" Her cheeks flushed, and she looked away. "I'm not here to fight," I said finally, standing. "But I'm also not here to be treated like a guest. I own this place now, and that means I get a say in how things are run, whether you like it or not." I left the table and headed outside, letting the screen door slam behind me. The morning air was cool and crisp, and I breathed it in like it was the first fresh breath I'd had since stepping off that plane. Out by the barn, the fields stretched out under the rising sun. My grandfather used to say the land was the most important thing a man could have, not because of the money, but because it meant a future. And now it was mine. Inside the house, voices rose again, muffled but sharp. My family was arguing, and I knew I was the topic. Good. Let them argue. Let them stew. Because by the end of the day, everything was going to be different. The sit-down meeting that afternoon was almost theatrical in how tense it felt. My dad had cleared the dining table and laid out a stack of folders, bills, and receipts. My mom sat stiffly on one side, arms crossed, like she was there to keep the peace. Jake leaned against the doorway with that restless energy of his, clearly itching for a fight. I sat down slowly, set my folder on the table, and opened it. The room went quiet. "Let's start with the taxes," I said, my tone calm but firm. My dad slid a folder toward me. "Everything's current now. We caught up, thanks to you." I glanced over the numbers, then slid it back. "Right. And the utilities?" My mom shifted. "We've been paying those just fine. Except for the winter of last year." I cut in, pulling out a printed receipt from my own folder. "When the electric company sent a shut-off notice and I paid the $1,200 balance. And the bank statement right after where you thanked me for the transfer." Her face went red. She didn't argue. Jake, of course, couldn't resist. "So what? You're just going to wave your checkbook around and lord it over us. None of this means you get to boss us around." I looked at him and smiled slowly. "You're right. It doesn't mean I get to boss you around. But being the legal owner does." That shut him up for a moment. "This isn't just about money," I continued. "This is about respect. I spent 2 years away, sending everything I could to keep this place from falling apart, and the first thing I got when I came home was a hug for Jake and a lecture about how my room isn't mine anymore. You didn't just take my space, you took my place in this family." My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last 24 hours. He rubbed his temples and sighed. "What do you want, Luke?" I'd been waiting for that question. "First," I said, "I'm taking my room back. The nursery can be moved into the guest room. I'll even cover the cost of repainting and fixing it up for the baby. Second, from now on, all major decisions about the property go through me. That includes repairs, sales, improvements, everything. If I'm paying for it and my name's on the deed, I get the final say. Third," I let my eyes slide over to Jake. "Everyone pays rent." Jake's jaw dropped. "Rent? Are you serious?" "Dead serious," I said, meeting his glare. "You think running this place is free? You want to keep living here, you contribute like everyone else. A fair amount. I'm not trying to gouge anyone, but enough to show you have some skin in the game." "This is insane," he snapped. "You can't just waltz back here and turn this into some dictatorship. Mom, Dad, tell him this is crazy." But neither of them said anything. I leaned forward slightly. "Jake, I'm not asking you to like me. I'm asking you to respect what this house stands for. If you can't do that, you're free to leave. You're an adult, you can get your own place. But if you stay, you follow the rules." For a long moment, he just glared at me, breathing hard. Then he stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. My mom looked like she might cry, but my dad just nodded slowly, almost reluctantly. "Fair is fair," he said. "You've earned that much." The fight wasn't over that day, Not completely. There were tears, slammed doors, some icy dinners over the next week. But little by little, things started to shift. The nursery was moved to the guest room, just like I'd said. I spent a weekend painting it myself, bright new colors that made my niece laugh when she saw them. My room was cleared out and restored to how I'd left it, minus a few things they'd boxed up, but it felt like mine again. Jake grumbled about the rent at first, but eventually he started paying. Maybe because my dad told him he had no choice, or maybe because he realized I wasn't bluffing. He even started helping out more with the upkeep once he realized I wasn't just trying to throw my weight around. And something unexpected happened, too. The more I took charge, the more my parents seemed relieved. My dad started coming to me with questions about repairs and plans for the land, like he was passing me the torch. My mom softened too, no longer looking at me like I was a stranger in my own home. One night, a few weeks later, we were sitting on the porch watching the sun set over the fields. My dad cleared his throat and said quietly, "Your grandfather would have been proud of you, you know. You did what had to be done." I didn't say anything for a minute. Just let the quiet settle in. "Maybe," I said finally. "But next time, don't make me fight this hard to be part of the family." He nodded. Fair enough. The house felt different after that. Not perfect, but steadier. I'd drawn my line in the sand and stood my ground, and they'd seen I wasn't just the kid they could push aside anymore. The best part? A month later, Jake came to me on his own and asked if we could plant a new row of trees along the north fence, like Grandpa used to. I said yes. We worked side by side that weekend, not talking much, but it didn't feel hostile anymore. It felt like the start of something better. When we were done, I stood back and looked at the house, the land, everything that had caused so much tension just weeks before. It felt like mine again. And for the first time since I'd stepped off that plane, I felt like I was really home.